we're here with John Baxter and talking about his new book, Secret Cinema.
Right.
And great to have you here,
Which
John.
is,
Yeah.
here it is, yes,
Yes.
exactly.
And so just wanted to ask you some questions about it. And can you tell us something about Secret Cinema?
It's a big subject.
Yeah.
Yes, when I was living in Los Angeles in the 1980s, I got interested in the topic because I had a friend in the business, a guy called William Rotsler, Bill Rotsler. I knew him from science fiction, which was my main interest then. Bill had written a book, a very interesting book called Contemporary Erotic Cinema, and he was also, in a small way, a producer and actor in what were then called adult movies.
Okay.
And of course, this is the vogue, this is the period when there were still these cinemas that showed these, and most of what was available was on film. This is before tape.
Yeah.
So there was this period of about 4 years when there really was, a burgeoning business. And I was quite interested in this, and Bill was a wonderful guide. Mm-hmm. And because I was writing a lot for the magazines at the time, for Playboy and Penthouse and so on, I interviewed some of the X-rated actors, and I covered the 1989 Heart-Ons, which was the sort of porn Oscars, and wrote a big piece about that, which was in Playboy. So I thought I'll write a book about this. I finished the book just about the time that VHS really began to cut in. And then I left LA and came to live in France. And the book was there. I offered it to my agent, and he said, if you really want to kind of break into the business over here, this is not the book to do it. So I put it aside, and I, as you know, wrote the biography of Federico Fellini, which was very successful and got into a totally different groove. So this one just sat on the shelf for all these years until a small publisher said, I don't suppose you've got any books that you'd like. Oh, I thought, maybe this would do. Yeah. And so the rest is history, as they say.
How did you come up with the idea for the title Secret Cinema?
I don't know, it just seemed to be a reasonable description that wasn't too catch-penny. I mean, you could have put dirty movies, sort of sex in the cinema, but I thought, no, it is really a genre, and therefore, like a genre, it deserves to be seen separately and given the same kind of, not scholarly treatment, but at least serious treatment. So to make it a kind of cinema like gangster cinema, which I'd already written about, science fiction cinema, it seemed natural, and everybody seems to like the title.
Oh, wonderful. How many books have you published in total?
44.
44, my gosh, that's a lot.
It doesn't seem a lot. I started early.
Yeah, I see, okay. Can you tell us something about the research phase of this book?
Oh, that was the fun part. Yeah. Well, because of that bill, I had access to a lot of people. So it was very good that the Heart-Ons happened more or less at the beginning of my research. So I had a chance to meet. I met Nina Hartley. I met my favourite Hypatia Lee, Vicky Lynch. And Budley, her husband. I met John Leslie. I met George MacDonald, who starred in Behind the Green Door. Later on, I met Marilyn Chambers. I interviewed Ginger Lynn. Got to know Ginger quite well. I did a big feature on her for the Sunday Times in London. And got to know a lot of the other people in the business list. Henry Paris, various directors. And they in turn put me on to other people. They're very nice, mostly very nice people. Mm-hmm. They're very like athletes, I found. They have a lot of the same attitude to athletes, very body conscious, very focused, not very flamboyant, not at all what you expect of people in the sex business. They have more normal lives. That's their job. You know, they do other things, so I found them very accessible. As well as looking at a lot of the movies that were going, I also dug back into the earlier porn movies. I did a lot of that research in Europe where they're more accessible, especially in France. So I tried to make it a genuinely historical perspective. It was no more difficult than researching Stanley Kubrick, for instance.
No, I see. Because, it's amazing that, for example, the porn star like Nina Hartley is still very prominent in the business. And she's going strong and looks great.
Yeah, there she is. Yes, there she is in Boogie Nights. There she is still lecturing, still performing to some extent, less so now. But yes, and of course she's the inspiration for Amber Waves in Boogie Nights, and that was filled with references to the business. That was one of the interesting things, the fact that it is a self-referential group. I don't know whether you know the series The Deuce that was on HBO a couple of years ago, with Maggie Gyllenhaal as a girl who starts out as a street prostitute, but becomes a producer of X-rated movies, and it's filled with little jokes and in-jokes, that obviously are meant for the aficionado. It was really an interesting project.
Wow, that's interesting, because I know there were a lot of porn, or shall we say adult film actors and actresses who in later years they've actually moved on to becoming agents and things like that.
But a very few, Blake, really. The later history of adult performers is really sad. The number of them who, when they get to about 40, the number of suicides is appalling. It isn't AIDS that's killing them; it's the people are killing themselves.
I was reading the book that was written by an adult film star. Her name was Lisa Ann, and she was saying that there was so many people who they could not fulfill their contracts, and because of that, they resulted in suicide afterwards.
So it happens over and over again. A lot of them, of course, coke did them in, but it's mostly they get to about 40, 45. They're in fact on YouTube. There are a series of interviews, especially with male people like John Leslie and so on, Randy Spears, talking about they put little money aside. They bought an apartment building. They're now middle-aged guys, aging guys. There are no, as Scott Fitzgerald said, there are no second acts in American lives. Well, in American porn lives, definitely no second act.
No, really, yeah. Because I know, like, for example, like Lisa Ann, she went on to doing this fantasy football.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's gotten
into lingerie league.
Yeah. So she's gotten into this fantasy football, and also she became an agent as well. So she's done very, very well for herself.
Oh, glad.
Yeah.
She's in that Shaking Sarah Palin.
Exactly. Who's nailing Palin?
Nailing Palin.
Yeah.
Very good too. She's very good.
Yeah, and so it was actually. It's quite an interesting book. If you get a chance to read it, she really does tell and gives some interesting insights to the industry.
Oh, there are a lot of stories.
Yeah. And another thing was I found that the historical background to adult cinema to be extremely interesting. That you put in here,
I'm glad.
Because it was, especially the part about Joan Crawford as well.
Well, that is the area. That's a vague area. Traditionally, there's so many films and books based on how some contemporary movie star or personality did porn when they were younger. And you hear a lot of names thrown around. Most of them turn out to be fictitious. However, every now and then something real pops up. Marilyn Monroe is a classic case. For many years, people said, "Oh, Monroe, no, she never did it. There was another actress who looked a bit like her who appeared in it." And then up pops this bit of home movies of her giving a blowjob to somebody or other. What a surprise! Well, Joan Crawford was the other name that was mentioned a lot, and there are a handful of films, The Casting Couch being the best known, in which there is a young woman who is the spitting image of Crawford. A lot of people have put a lot of effort into this, including Louis Jacobs, who was the advisor to Hugh Hefner, who accumulated a large collection. And he obviously would have been the first number you'd ring if you had such a film. And he said he'd seen a number of versions of this and the other films. And he said he couldn't really believe it was Crawford. The problem is dates. You can't date these very well. And it could be that when it was made, she was still in pigtails. But maybe, the dates are wrong and maybe it is her. A lot of people thought it was. For years, people used to send her on her birthday prints, sort of shots taken from these things. And it was often mentioned. Today, it's still an open question. It wouldn't surprise me because there are other examples of lesser known actors and actresses who certainly did this.
Well, it was Hedy Lamarr, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh well, Ecstasy, yes,
yeah, exactly.
But that's a semi-professional film. Yes, certainly. No, she's in that. But there are things. Chuck Connor's supposed to have been in gay porn and various things like that. My favourite one actually is Sly Stallone, who appears bare-assed in this thing. And when he heard what the prices were going for the cost of a print of this, he said, for that sort of money, he'd go over to the people and do it in person.
Also, I found the interesting section about Betty Page, too.
Oh, I love Betty, right.
Yeah.
It was so funny when I was writing the Fellini book. I went to Rome and I interviewed Bernardino Zapponi, who wrote the screenplay for Casanova. And I said, I admire your work so much. And he said, well, thank you very much. And I said, particularly your book about Betty Page. He said, you also are knowing the divine Betty. I said, of course, and your book is about, oh, this is so marvellous. And we talked about nothing but Betty Page for like the first hour. And I said, well, I'm really here to talk about your work with Fellini. Yes, but have you seen her in such and such? So talk about bonding, really. The Betty Page fans are really, they're like religious fanatics, I think, don't you? Don't you see? I mean, I don't know whether you share my enthusiasm.
Well, yeah, it is funny because one of my previous people on the show was Bill Malone, the director.
Oh, right, sure.
And when he logged onto his Zoom account to start the interview, I noticed the identification he put was Betty Page.
Well, yeah. One of my great moments, actually, when I first went to America, oh God, so long ago, 30, 40 years ago, I went around to a place called Movie Star News, which was just a little shop down in the village, to buy some movie stills. And this tall lady served me, and she was very nice, I didn't know much about it, but I realized later on, she was Paula Claw, the sister of Irving Claw, who was the producer of all of the Betty Page films. And in fact, there's a portrait in the book of Irving with Betty. And it was Paula, apparently. I mean, there was a stream of the Claw productions that were bondage things. Betty is tied up in various kinds of racks and ropes and everything. And Paula designed and built these. Apparently she was quite good in the workshop, and so she was the carpenter for these things. And Bernardino Zapponi was fascinated by the fact that he was Claude's sister with the hammer and nails, you know.
Oh, dear.
And Betty saying, "Oh, make that a bit looser because I don't think I can get my leg in," you know. I mean, it was just such a business, such a domestic activity, you know. And I always remember her, this tall, rather sort of John Fordian looking figure, sort of like Beulah Bondi.
No, really. Also found it was interesting you were a section about Deep Throat. Yeah.
Oh, well, of course,
Yeah.
that's the great story, Deep Throat.
Yeah.
And the real story, which of course is so revealing, the whole thing about Chuck Traynor. You know, this story she put out that she did it at gunpoint, and you know, she was brutalized and beaten up, and here she is completely naked. There's not a bruise on her. I mean, and you know, really, how what credibility can there be for these stories? And for a long time, you know, as you know, she, in the 2 books she wrote, she denied utterly had never ever having been in this movie and that movie. And then the movies were produced, and she, well, yeah, all right, I was in them, yeah, but you know, but and you only, I mean, I'm not so stupid that I can't tell when somebody is under duress. You know, I mean, if you were trying to do something and there was a gun at your head, it would show.
Yeah.
These performances were utterly without any such duress. They were natural, they were effective, they were skillful. She was good at what she did. And of course, politically she had to deny it, mostly to get out of being, you know, prosecuted. It's the same with Tracy Lord, you know, she would lie and lie and lie to get out of being prosecuted, as who would not?
Yeah.
I understand why she did. I understand why these women would deny so much, but it doesn't make it true.
Well, it was, you know, my experience in the film industry is the porn industry is sort of like a film industry within a film industry, you know.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a secret cinema.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But and it's interesting that there was a period before it came out, you know, the way it came out of the court, before those Supreme Court decisions that made it all a question of local standards and everything, and gave some flexibility. Up until then, everything was done undercover. People were friendly. Films were passed, you know, from the back of cars. People were given introductions, letters, and things like that. It was all on the down low. Then, you know, it began to open up and become a much more professional business. So I try and reflect that it went from being a very secret cinema to really being a semi-public cinema. And just about the time it was kind of getting things right, VHS came in and just obliterated it.
Yeah. Interesting, because I was recently reading the book that was written by the actor Burt Ward, who played the part of Robin in Batman. Yeah. And it was interesting to read that how at the time when they were shooting this, you know, it was more the free love situation was in the world, and they were actually at some point invited to parties in Hollywood.
Well, Adam West was a babe magnet. Women were supposed to be lining up outside the hotel room.
And apparently there was a story that he went with Frank Gorshin to a party, and it turned out to be a orgy.
Right. Yes.
And because they were sort of playing the Batman thing all the time at the party, they all got upset with them and kicked them out of the party.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I would have thought that would have made them celebs.
Yeah.
I love that story about Linda Lovelace being invited to the Playboy Mansion, and Hugh Hefner pursuing her around with a bottle of baby oil,
Yeah, right.
naked. Yeah, it's very difficult to take a lot of this seriously.
Yeah.
At the time, it seemed very serious, but then, when you think back on it, it's like, what was I doing? Why was I dressed up like that? What was I doing with these people?
Well, it's like the old story. It was my parents were invited once to the Playboy Mansion, and Hefner came up to them and said, because my dad was working for Disney, and he says, well, Walt made his money with the mouse and I made it with the rabbits.
It's true.
Yeah. I was interested to read the section about snuff films as well.
Oh, that is an interesting area, yeah. The whole thing about snuff films is, essentially it's a fantasy. Not because there are no films of people being killed. Because there are numerous films of people being murdered, taken by people who are into that sort of thing. Yes, but they're private films. The idea that there is a market for snuff films is ridiculous, simply because people, it isn't something fetishized. This was the thing that Bill Rotsler explained is that when we go to look at an erotic film, we take our expectations with us. And so he said, if you look at the same scene of a couple together, you look at one and you say, well, this is a brother and sister. And some people say, oh, wow, great. But you say, no, it's a school teacher and his student. Another group would say, interesting. And then no, it's actually brother and sister. We all of us have a fetish. There's something that turns us on. Death doesn't turn people on. It's like blood does not turn people on. If blood was an erotic turn on, there'd be endless vampire sex, pornographic vampire movies. There aren't. If watching people being murdered on screen was a fetish, there would be snuff films everywhere. They're not. The only one film that was ever promoted as a snuff film was a fake.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting that there is one film that sort of brings up this whole subject, even though it's not really an adult film. It was called Cannibal Holocaust.
Yes, that's right.
Made by Ruggero Deodato.
Right.
Yes. Who himself was actually pursued under murder charges.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's not as though it doesn't exist. Yes, it does. There's a film with Michael Rooker called Diary of a Murder or something or other. It's about two guys who go around, and one of them videotapes the murders that the other one commits. I'm sure that happens.
Yeah.
I'm sure on the underground there are such films. It's just that the idea that there should be a class of theatrical films called snuff films is by its nature absurd. Proved by the fact that people by now would have found some way to make money out of it. It just doesn't work.
Well, the other thing I found too is now the amazing contrast of porn production during the early days as opposed to today. Especially, now the secrecy of making a porn film is not so secret anymore. And actually the San Fernando Valley is known as Silicon Valley now.
Right. Yeah. No, it used to be. It was a real industry out in the valley. There were all these Cinema City and so on, did nothing but porn, and there was money in it. Now the money is in getting it into online, and then the various sites. Well, you got to sign up to get the service. So they're not films any longer; they're clips.
Yeah.
And they're well, anyway, it's not an industry. That was that was the point. That's why I thought it was interesting to write a book, because you could really draw a line. You could say what I'm talking about is the X-rated adult film industry, which existed from, well, time immemorial up until about 1990. What happened after that is an utterly different situation.
Well, I guess after those days, we lost a lot of these cinemas, like the Pussycat Theaters and things like that.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Mhm.
As soon as you could put it on tape,
Yeah.
there was no money in it, because you could just take it in the back room and run off 50 copies.
Yeah.
So why would you want to go to the trouble of, shooting and editing and so on? But as the series like The Deuce show and Boogie Nights and so on, there was a time when it really was an industry, and an extraordinarily popular one. At one point, they were producing more movies than the studios were. I mean, they were cheaper to produce, but in terms of quantity, it was that big.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Because I know that, for example, since, once the age of VHS came along, then when we got into streaming created a situation whereby it was so easy for people to actually either download or this. So, it became the urgency became to secure these sites like Pornhub and things like that to keep people from illegally downloading things from there.
Yes, true.
Because all these people were losing a ton of money from that. Yeah.
It was different. It was like a mini Hollywood. There were stars, there were good directors and bad. There was Damiano and people like that, and there were people like Bill Osco. There were the Mitchell brothers, You look at Behind the Green Door. You can accept it as a serious film. You can even look at Deep Throat and or more to the point, The Devil in Miss Jones, and see in it, something to comment on, something to review, and so on. But how can you review, 50 clips of men giving blowjobs to other men or women or whatever you like? No, it isn't any longer a cinema, which is sad, because I liked the people very much, and they were good friends, and I admired some of what they did, and I enjoyed the time I worked on it. But it is sad; it's gone with the wind.
Yes, exactly. Great. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to cover the basic parts of the book, because I want people to buy the book.
I would like them to buy the book, definitely. Yeah.
And I found it a fascinating read, and so
That's
it was really wonderful. Yeah. And so it was a pleasure having you on the program.
As always, a pleasure to talk to you, Blake.
Yeah, and this is our different little. So we're in the couch room here.
Right.
The studio, and so we got this. Yeah.
Next time we should talk about the book I'm working on now, which is the biography of Harry Saltzman.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I would like that very much. That would be good. Yeah, perfect. Wonderful. Well, great. Well, thanks a lot, John. Thank you very much for appearing. Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay.